China's citizens are being scammed by Chinese criminals in the UK. American companies are making record low profits in China, and German warships have sailed between China and Taiwan. Then more on this week's China News headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Surfshark. Whenever you go online, you should be using a VPN like Surfshark to cover your tracks and protect your identity. I'll tell you more at the end. China is strongly advising its car makers to keep key electric vehicle technology inside the country. China is building factories abroad in countries like Turkey, Thailand, and Hungary to escape punitive Western tariffs on imported Chinese EVs. But the idea is to only send so-called knockdown kits to the foreign plants. In other words, the key parts of a Chinese EV would be produced domestically and finally assembled in those foreign plants. Essentially like an IKEA, but for cars. And I'm mad enough when a part's missing from a stool. The CCP's Ministry of Commerce also reportedly told Chinese automakers not to make any auto-related investments in India, which makes sense since India and China aren't exactly the best of friends. And some investors have been switching from China to India due to China's economic slowdown. But these guidelines set by the CCP could harm Chinese automakers' efforts to globalize in a highly competitive market, even as domestic EV sales are falling, for some reason. It also harms individual European countries and others around the world, seeking to woo these Chinese EV companies into building factories that could create jobs for their populations. Even if it's just assembling EVs like a car IKEA. I hope their instructions are easier to follow. Speaking of manufacturing death machines, China has hit 9 U.S. military-linked firms with a property freeze over weapon sales to Taiwan. A few months ago, China sanctioned and banned firms like Lockheed Martin over Taiwan arms sales. Now, firms such as these have had their property inside China frozen. Organizations and individuals within China are also prohibited from engaging in transactions with these firms. Over the years, China has repeatedly called on the U.S. to stop supporting Taiwan, even though the U.S. doesn't even formally recognize the island as an independent country. But after U.S. President Joe Biden signed a foreign military aid deal last year to Taiwan, along with Ukraine, Israel, and various Indo-Pacific allies, the CCP is lashing out. And given that the U.S. is considering a sale to Taipei of even more military aid, I'm not sure anyone in the White House is really listening to Beijing. On Wednesday, a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry urged the U.S. to immediately stop the dangerous trend of arming Taiwan, and said the U.S. must stop conniving and supporting Taiwan independence and stop undermining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. But those sanctions might not even have much of an effect, since American companies are seeing record low profits in China. According to a China business report by the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, out of 306 companies polled, a record low of 66% were profitable in 2023. And if that weren't bad enough, the report also found that only 47% of respondents were optimistic about their business outlook in China over the next 5 years, which is the lowest in the survey's history of more than 2 decades. I assume if those same people were given a psychological survey, 47% would be found dangerously gullible and terminally naive. Those low numbers probably shouldn't come as a surprise, given China's increasingly hostile attitude towards foreign businesses. On top of that, China's economy is in dire straits. That is leading a lot of investors and companies either to pull out of China in favor of some other country, or deterring new investors from going to China in the first place. Deterring new investors from going to China. I've been doing that for the past decade. Welcome to the party, gang. A little fashionably late, aren't we? The report also found that in 2023, a record high of 25% of companies who took part in the poll cut investment in China, mostly because of China's slowing growth. The results of this report are even more devastating to the CCP because it came just after a similar report from the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China, which also indicated that European companies were more hesitant to invest in the country for similar reasons. So, better late than never, I suppose. Chinese citizens have been targeted by a Chinese crime syndicate being run out of the UK. We already knew this was happening with pogos in the Philippines, and have even done a few videos on them. I'll link them below. This particular scam is from 2022 to 2023 and happened on the Isle of Man. The scammers used a method known as pig butchering, a term used to describe a particular kind of long-term deception where scammers will gradually gain a victim's trust over time in order to lure them into making increasing contributions. It sounds kind of like gold digging for people who aren't hot enough to be gold diggers. According to the case, the defendants would work in teams to pull Chinese investors into chat groups on QQ, which is basically China's version of WhatsApp. One scammer would play the role of an investment teacher, and others would pretend to be fellow investors. Then they would act as hype men for the skills of the teacher and encourage the student on the QQ chat to invest and continue investing over time. 6 people involved fleeced around $5.3 million from at least 12 victims, according to a Chinese court, while working for a company called Manx Internet Commerce, or MIC. However, the court did note that it's hard to verify the total amount stolen, so it could very well be even more money than that. This is the first time such a scam has come out of a European country, although many of the MIC scammers got their start in the Philippines. And after the break, another Japanese student is stabbed in China. Welcome back. A Japanese student has been stabbed to death in China. The incident comes amidst a spate of stabbing attacks on foreigners, including Japanese students. This particular student was on his way to Japanese school when he was stabbed. The suspect, a 44-year-old, was apprehended immediately, and the 10-year-old victim passed away the next day. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian said that the case is being investigated and that his country will continue to take effective measures to protect the safety of all foreigners in China. After the child's death, the Foreign Ministry said it was saddened and distressed about the incident and expressed condolences to his family, who are Japanese and Chinese citizens. Tokyo has not commented on how this crime will broadly affect relations between the two countries, but Japan's vice foreign minister summoned the Chinese ambassador to Tokyo to convey serious concerns about the incident, and the Japanese consulate general in the area requested details on the incident from authorities and sent staff out to gather more information. And Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida told reporters that he considers this to be an extremely despicable crime and a serious and grave matter. China and Japan have historically had a very testy relationship, and tensions still linger over territorial disputes and Japan's close relationship with China's Western rivals. This has led to anti-Japanese sentiment rising in China, often encouraged by the CCP. The attack happened on the anniversary of the 1931 Mukden incident, when Japanese troops staged a railway attack in what is now known as the city of Shenyang. That proved to be the opener for Japan's invasion of Manchuria and broader war on China. Japan had advised Japanese schools in China to ramp up their security after a spate of stabbings targeting its citizens and amid the rampant anti-Japanese sentiment in the country, and even asked the Chinese Foreign Ministry to do everything it could to ensure the safety of Japanese schools on the anniversary. The U.S. is locking in steep tariff hikes on Chinese imports, including a 100% duty on Chinese electric vehicles, 50% on solar cells, and 25% on steel, aluminum, EV batteries, and key minerals. Europe and Canada have both taken similar steps, the idea being to hamper China's bid to flood the world markets with cheap goods. China has warned that the move will backfire and solve nothing, and they would know since backfiring and solving nothing is the outcome of like 90% of their plans. Meanwhile, others in the U.S. say that the increase in tariffs will disrupt supply chains, including for semiconductor-intensive products, and do little to stop what China is doing. The decision marks the end of an over 2-year review of tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, many of which have remained under Biden's tenure in the White House. Trade with China is an important issue in the election campaign, with both Republicans and Democrats courting automakers and related blue-collar manufacturing industries in the Rust Belt, swing states, while trying to seem tough on China. You know China's a real threat when Democrats and Republicans agree on something. Germany sailed warships through the Taiwan Strait for the first time in 22 years. Germany seems to be aligning itself with the U.S. to counter Chinese aggression in the South China Sea. The ships were headed to the Philippines from South Korea, where they had been conducting operations in support of UN sanctions on North Korea. Of course, the CCP criticized the incident, saying it endangered China's security, and of course, they would never have their militaries positioned in a menacing manner near other countries. But Berlin made a very simple statement on its stance regarding the Taiwan Strait. The German defense minister said, "The signal is a very simple one, which we have always maintained, and I have always maintained. International waters are international waters." It's nice to see Germany supporting allies and freedom. They have a bit of a bad image they're still working on. Did you know that every time you go online, everything you do is potentially compromised? It's true, unless you're taking active steps to protect yourself. That's why no matter where you live, no matter what you do online, you should always be keeping your internet activity private with a VPN like Surfshark, especially when you're doing things like logging into your bank account or credit card online. If you ever use shared Wi-Fi, you're in danger. Hackers can easily steal your password without you even knowing it. And when you travel, especially overseas, you might need a VPN that makes it look like you're in your home country, just to log into your accounts. So it saves a huge potential hassle. And you can install it on as many devices as you want, even on your Amazon Fire TV stick. It's a great way to make it appear like you're logged in from a different country, so you can access all the good shows that are geo-blocked on Netflix. So seriously, check out Surfshark. Go to surfshark.com/uncensored and you'll get 4 months extra when you sign up. That's surfshark.com/uncensored, or use the code uncensored at checkout. The link is in the description below. And before YouTube sends you off to some random video, instead, click on this video I made that I think you'll really enjoy from my gaming channel, where I talk about Hegelian philosophy in the context of the video game Fear and Hunger 2. Clicking it also helps us with the YouTube algorithm. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.